I knew something was wrong the second I saw a black pickup truck parked outside my house. It was parked too close to the curb, angled like the driver had pulled in fast and stopped thinking halfway through. I remember noticing that before I noticed anything else. Not the weather, not the time, not even the fact that I was supposed to be 30 minutes across town walking a framing crew through a change order. I had only come home for my laptop. That was it. I'd left it on the desk in my home office that morning, and by lunch I needed the bid file saved on it. Normally, I would have had one of my guys handle the meeting without me, but this client was difficult, and the numbers mattered. So I pulled into my driveway in the middle of a workday, killed the engine, and sat there for a second, looking at that truck. I didn't recognize it. When I opened the front door, the house was quiet in a way that felt staged. No television, no music, no sound from Brooke's phone playing one of her podcasts. Then she appeared near the hallway. My wife looked at me like she had just seen a ghost. My name is Ethan Carter, and at the time, I thought I had a good life. I lived in Nashville, Tennessee, where I owned a small construction company that specialized in residential renovations and custom builds. It wasn't the biggest operation in the city, but it was mine. I had started it with one truck, a borrowed trailer, and more confidence than money. 15 years later, I employed 12 people and had projects booked months in advance. Most days started before sunrise and ended long after dark. I liked it that way. Brooke used to joke that I was physically incapable of sitting still. She worked as a school counselor at a private middle school across town. Her schedule was predictable. Mine rarely was. Somehow, over the years, we found a rhythm that seemed to work. At least that's what I believed. We had been married for 11 years. No children. A comfortable house in a quiet neighborhood. 2 paid-off vehicles. Retirement accounts that were growing steadily. The kind of life people describe as stable. A few weeks before everything fell apart, we had spent an entire Saturday driving around looking at lake properties. Nothing extravagant. Just a place where we could spend weekends fishing, grilling, and escaping the city. Brooke seemed excited about it. She had bookmarked listings, saved photos, even started talking about decorating ideas. A month before that, we had been planning a vacation to Montana. She wanted mountains. I wanted silence. Montana seemed to offer both. Looking back now, that's the part that still amazes me. How normal everything appeared. How completely convinced I was that we were building a future together. The truth is that the warning signs had been appearing for years. I just kept explaining them away. The conferences became more frequent. At first it was once or twice a year. Then every few months. Then suddenly there always seemed to be another professional development event somewhere. Chicago, Denver, Austin, Atlanta. There was always a reason. Always a schedule. Always an itinerary. I never questioned it. When someone lies consistently, the lie becomes easier to believe than the alternative. Then there were the weekend trips. Those started gradually too. School retreats, counseling workshops, training seminars. I remember helping her pack for several of them, carrying suitcases to her car, kissing her goodbye, telling her to drive safely. Every memory feels different now. Then there was the phone. That should have been obvious. For years, Brooke left her phone everywhere. Kitchen counters, bathroom sinks, coffee tables. Then one day it never left her hand again. Face down at dinner. Face down on the couch. Face down beside the bed. Whenever I entered a room, the screen seemed to disappear. I noticed it. Of course I noticed it. But every time I started asking questions, I found a reason not to continue. Trust is strange. Sometimes it protects a marriage. Sometimes it blinds you long after you should have opened your eyes. That afternoon, standing in my hallway and staring at Brooke's terrified expression, all of those memories suddenly came rushing back. Not as separate events. Not as isolated moments. As pieces of a pattern I should have seen years earlier. For a few seconds, neither of us said anything. Brooke stood near the hallway entrance with one hand gripping the edge of the wall so tightly her knuckles had turned white. I remember thinking how strange her expression looked. Not guilty. Not surprised. Terrified. The reaction didn't match my arrival. I was her husband. I lived there. There was no reason for her to look like that simply because I had come home early. "Ethan," she finally said. Her voice cracked slightly. "What are you doing here?" The question sounded wrong immediately. Not, "How was your morning?" Not, "Did you forget something?" Just, "What are you doing here?" I held up my truck keys. Left my laptop. For some reason, that answer seemed to make things worse. Her eyes darted toward the back of the house for a fraction of a second before returning to me. Most people would never have noticed it. I did. Years of managing construction projects had trained me to notice small details. Measurements. Patterns. Tiny inconsistencies. That brief glance felt important. I wasn't sure why yet. "I can grab it for you," she said quickly. Too quickly. I frowned. "What? Your laptop?" She forced a smile. "I can get it." I looked at her for a moment. My office was 10 feet away. There was no reason she needed to retrieve it. "No," I said. "I've got it." The smile vanished. If you've made it this far, this story clearly caught your attention. If you're enjoying it, drop a like on the video. It helps me see what kind of stories you want more of next. Let's keep going. That was the first moment my stomach tightened. Not because I knew anything, because suddenly I felt like I had walked into the middle of something. As I moved farther into the house, more details began registering. 2 wine glasses sat on the kitchen island. One contained a small amount of red wine at the bottom. The other was completely empty. Brooke didn't drink wine during the day, especially not on a Tuesday. I stopped walking. The house carried a faint smell I didn't recognize. Not strong, just enough to stand out. Cologne. Masculine. Expensive. I knew it instantly because I didn't wear cologne myself. Never had. The scent definitely wasn't mine. When I looked toward Brooke again, she was watching me carefully, like she was trying to anticipate my next move. Something shifted inside me right then. A small adjustment. A change in perspective. For years I had automatically explained things away, found reasonable answers, ignored uncomfortable possibilities. This time I didn't. I simply observed. The wine glasses. The smell. The panic in her eyes. The tension in her shoulders. The unusual silence throughout the house. Every piece by itself meant nothing. Together they felt different, like puzzle pieces sitting near each other before finally connecting. I turned toward the hallway leading to our bedroom. Immediately Brooke stepped forward. Not aggressively. Not obviously. Just enough to place herself between me and the direction I intended to go. My heartbeat slowed. Oddly, I became calmer. Not angry. Not emotional. Focused. "What are you doing?" she asked. I looked directly at her. For the first time that day, she couldn't maintain eye contact. And in that exact moment, before I saw anything else, before I discovered the truth, I already knew one thing. Whatever was waiting at the end of that hallway was going to change my life forever. I started walking. Not fast. Not dramatically. Just a normal pace down the hallway I had walked through thousands of times before. Behind me, I heard Brooke move. "Ethan." I didn't answer. My office was on the left. Our bedroom was straight ahead. The walk-in closet sat beyond it. The entire trip took maybe 10 seconds. It felt much longer. Every step seemed to confirm what my instincts had already figured out. The closer I got, the quieter Brooke became. She stopped trying to explain. Stopped trying to redirect me. Stopped pretending. That silence told me more than any confession could have. When I entered the bedroom, I immediately noticed something else. A pair of men's work boots sat partially hidden beside the dresser. Not mine. Different size. Different brand. Covered with fresh dust. Someone else's boots. Brooke froze in the doorway behind me. I turned toward the closet. The door was closed. For some reason, that detail felt almost absurd. A closed door. A simple piece of wood. Yet both of us knew exactly what stood on the other side of it. Neither of us spoke. I reached for the handle. Brooke finally found her voice. "Ethan, wait." I opened it anyway. A man stood inside. Tall. Mid-30s. Athletic build. Dark hair. He looked exactly like someone who had just been discovered hiding in another man's closet. His eyes widened. His shoulders tensed. For a second, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Nobody even seemed to breathe. I had imagined this moment before. Not specifically. Just the general nightmare every married person occasionally pushes out of their mind. Finding out. Seeing it. Being forced to face reality. I always assumed rage would come first. Or heartbreak. Or humiliation. Instead, I felt something completely unexpected. Relief. Not happiness. Not satisfaction. Relief. Because uncertainty disappeared instantly. All the questions. All the doubts. All the strange feelings I had ignored for years. Gone. The truth was standing directly in front of me. There was nothing left to wonder about. The man slowly raised his hands. Not in surrender. More like someone trying to show he wasn't looking for a fight. "Look," he said carefully. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." The statement was so ridiculous that I almost laughed. A misunderstanding. A man hiding in my closet. My wife standing behind me. And somehow this was a misunderstanding. I looked at Brooke. She couldn't meet my eyes. That hurt more than finding him. The shame on her face confirmed everything. Years of lies compressed into a single expression. The man stepped out of the closet. "My name's Logan." I nodded once. Nothing else. No insults. No threats. No shouting. Just silence. That seemed to confuse him. He clearly expected anger. Most people would. Instead, I found myself studying him. Observing. Assessing. The same way I evaluated problems on construction sites. Logan looked nervous. But he also looked genuinely confused. As if the situation unfolding around him wasn't what he expected either. Then he said something that changed everything. Something none of us could take back. "I swear to God," he said, looking directly at me. "Brooke told me she was already divorced." The room became completely silent. And for the first time that day, Brooke's face showed real panic. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Logan stood beside the closet door, staring at me. Brooke stared at the floor, and I stood there trying to process what he had just said. Not because I doubted him, because I believed him immediately. The reaction on Brooke's face told me everything. There are moments when people reveal the truth without saying a word. This was one of them. "Logan," I said calmly, "how long have you known my wife?" He looked uncertain. His eyes shifted toward Brooke, then back to me. "About 8 months. 8 months. The number landed harder than finding him in the closet. 8 months wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a bad decision. It wasn't a rough patch in a marriage. 8 months was a second life. A parallel relationship. A sustained deception. Logan rubbed the back of his neck. I honestly thought she was divorced. Brooke finally spoke. "Logan, stop." Her voice sounded weak. Desperate. But the damage was already done. "No," he said, looking at her for the first time. "I think he deserves the truth." I remember being surprised by that. Not because he was defending me. Because he seemed genuinely angry. Like someone who had just realized he had been manipulated too. "She told me you separated over a year ago," he continued. "She said the divorce paperwork was being finalized." I looked at Brooke. Nothing. No denial. No correction. No explanation. Just silence. The truth sat between us like concrete. Logan exhaled slowly. "We traveled together." The words kept coming now. Chicago. Denver. Austin. Each city felt familiar. Each city matched a conference Brooke had supposedly attended. The pieces were clicking together faster now. Trip after trip. Lie after lie. A carefully constructed story that had lasted for years. And somehow I still wasn't angry. Not yet. I felt detached. Like I was reviewing evidence from someone else's life. Logan pulled out his phone. "I can show you messages." I shook my head. "No." Because I already knew. The details didn't matter anymore. The marriage was finished regardless of what was inside that phone. Logan nodded. Then something unexpected happened. He looked embarrassed. Not caught. Embarrassed. Like a man realizing he had unknowingly participated in something ugly. "I wouldn't have done this if I knew," he said quietly. I believed him. Oddly enough, that made everything worse. Because if Logan was telling the truth, then Brooke hadn't just lied to me. She had lied to him too. Different lies. Same purpose. Control. For the first time all day, Brooke finally looked up. "Ethan." I raised a hand. Not aggressively. Just enough to stop her. I wasn't interested in explanations anymore. Not until I knew everything. Logan glanced toward the bedroom door. "I should leave." "Probably," I said. He nodded once. Then he walked out. 30 seconds later, I heard the front door close. The house became silent again. But now it was a different silence. The truth had entered the room. And once that happens, nothing ever feels quiet again. As Brooke stood there searching for words, I realized something important. Logan wasn't the beginning of the story. He was simply the first person I'd caught. And for the first time, I wondered how many others there had been before him. After Logan left, Brooke and I stood in opposite ends of the bedroom like strangers who had accidentally wandered into the same house. For a long time, neither of us spoke. I sat down on the edge of the bed. She remained standing. The distance between us couldn't have been more than 10 feet. It felt like miles. "Ethan," she finally said, "I can explain." The sentence sounded automatic. Rehearsed. Like something people say because they don't know what else to say. I looked at her and realized something strange. I wasn't interested in explanations. Explanations only matter when you're trying to save something. I already knew there was nothing left to save. "How many?" I asked. Her face tightened. "What? How many men?" The room went silent again. That silence was answer enough. Brooke looked away first. I nodded slowly. That hurt more than any confession could have. Not because I had a number. Because I didn't. The fact that she needed time to think told me everything. I don't know what you're talking about. It was a weak lie. We both knew it. I stood up and walked past her. I'm going back to work. What? I have a meeting in 40 minutes. She stared at me as though I had spoken another language. Aren't you angry? That question stopped me. I turned around. For the first time that day, I answered honestly. I think I'm past angry. The expression on her face changed. Almost disappointment. As if she had prepared herself for yelling. Prepared herself for accusations. Prepared herself for drama. But not this. Not calm. Not distance. I grabbed my laptop from the office and left. The drive back to the job site felt surreal. Traffic moved normally. People crossed streets. Construction crews worked on buildings. The world continued exactly as it had that morning. Only my life had changed. I made it through the rest of the day on autopilot. Measurements. Phone calls. Client meetings. Paperwork. I don't remember much of it. That night, Brooke tried to talk again. I listened without listening. The details blurred together. Mistakes. Confusion. Loneliness. Regret. Every explanation sounded less important than one simple fact. She had lied repeatedly for years. Around midnight, after she finally went to bed, I sat alone in my office. For the first time, I started looking. Not through her phone. Not through her messages. Through our finances. Joint accounts. Credit card statements. Travel expenses. Hotel charges. At first, I expected nothing. Then I found the first discrepancy. A hotel charge in Chicago from 9 months earlier. 2 guests. Not one. My stomach tightened. I kept going. Another charge in Denver. Another in Austin. Another in Atlanta. Every discovery connected to a trip I remembered. A conference. A workshop. A seminar. The explanations suddenly looked different. I opened airline confirmations. Car rentals. Restaurant receipts. The pattern grew larger. Clearer. More organized. This wasn't random. It was systematic. Years of deception hidden behind professional travel. Around 3 in the morning, I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. The evidence covered my desk. Statements. Printouts. Receipts. And one thought kept returning. Logan hadn't been the first. He wasn't even close. He was simply the latest man who believed a story Brooke had been telling for a very long time. And the deeper I looked, the more I realized I had only scratched the surface. Over the next week, I became someone I barely recognized. Not because I was obsessed, because I was focused. Every morning, I went to work. Every evening, I came home. And every night, after Brooke fell asleep, I sat in my office gathering facts. The emotional part of the situation had already burned itself out. What remained was documentation, reality, paper trails. The first thing I learned was that people who lie for years eventually become careless. Not because they're stupid, because maintaining a double life requires constant attention. Sooner or later, details get missed. Brooke had missed plenty. Hotel reservations connected to personal email addresses. Flight confirmations forwarded between accounts. Restaurant receipts that never matched the locations she claimed to visit. The evidence accumulated quickly, much faster than I expected. One evening, I discovered a hidden credit card statement. That single document answered several questions at once. Thousands of dollars. Hotel rooms. Restaurants. Luxury gifts. Weekend getaways. All paid from accounts I didn't even know existed. I printed everything. Organized everything. Stored copies in multiple locations. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I wanted clarity. The truth becomes easier to understand when it's sitting in front of you in black and white. About 10 days after finding Logan in my closet, I finally confronted Brooke properly. Not emotionally. Not dramatically. I simply placed a stack of documents on the kitchen table. Bank records. Travel expenses. Hotel invoices. Credit card statements. She looked at them for less than 10 seconds before realizing exactly what they were. Her face turned pale. Where did you get these? I ignored the question. How much money? She swallowed. What? How much money did you spend? The silence returned. I was becoming familiar with it. Every difficult answer seemed to live inside those silences. Eventually she sat down. For the first time since everything began, she looked genuinely frightened. Not because of the affairs. Because the lies were collapsing. One fact at a time. You were spying on me. The accusation almost made me laugh. No. I tapped the documents. I was reading our financial records. She looked away. The conversation could have ended there. It should have ended there. Instead, something inside Brooke snapped. Maybe fear. Maybe desperation. Maybe the realization that she could no longer control the narrative. Whatever it was, it arrived suddenly. She stood so quickly her chair crashed backward onto the floor. The noise echoed through the kitchen. Ethan, stop doing this. I remained seated. Doing what? This. She pointed toward the paperwork, toward the evidence, toward reality itself. Then she grabbed her car keys from the countertop. At first I thought she was leaving. Instead, she stepped toward me. Everything happened fast after that. Too fast. The first slash caught me across the cheek before I fully understood what she was doing. Pain exploded along the side of my face. I stumbled backward. Warm blood immediately began running down my skin. For a split second, neither of us moved, both shocked by what had just happened. Then Brooke's expression changed completely, and I realized the situation had become far more dangerous than a failing marriage. The cut across my cheek wasn't deep, but it bled immediately. I could feel blood running down my neck as I stared at Brooke. For a second, she looked as shocked as I was. Then panic took over. Real panic. The kind that makes people stop thinking rationally. Brooke. I kept my voice calm. Too calm, probably. She was breathing hard now, gripping the keys so tightly they rattled in her hand. Just put them down. Instead, she backed away. Her eyes darted around the kitchen. The paperwork. The overturned chair. The blood on my face. Every piece of evidence that her world was falling apart. I took a step toward the sink. Not toward her. Toward a towel. That was when she made the second mistake. A canister of pepper spray sat inside the kitchen junk drawer. We both knew it was there. I had bought it years earlier after a string of vehicle break-ins in the neighborhood. Before I realized what she intended to do, she pulled the drawer open. Brooke, don't. The warning came too late. A bright orange stream hit me directly in the face. The pain was immediate. Brutal. My eyes slammed shut. It felt like someone had poured gasoline into them and struck a match. I stumbled backward into the counter. Every instinct told me to open my eyes. Doing so only made the burning worse. I could barely breathe, barely think. My hands searched desperately for the sink. Water. I needed water. Somewhere through the pain, I heard Brooke moving through the kitchen. Then I heard something else. Her phone. She was making a call. At first I assumed she was calling a friend. A lawyer. Maybe her sister. Then I heard the words. I need the police. My stomach dropped. Even through the agony, I understood exactly what was happening. The operator asked a question. Brooke answered immediately. My husband attacked me. The sentence hit harder than the pepper spray. I froze, standing there half blind, blood on my face, desperately trying to wash chemicals out of my eyes. And she was telling police that I had attacked her. The realization was terrifying, not because I feared arrest, because I suddenly understood how dangerous desperate people can become. I kept rinsing my eyes, kept trying to stay calm. The front door remained open. Neighbors would hear. Someone would see. Facts still mattered. At least I hoped they did. Within minutes, sirens approached. Then more sirens. The house filled with voices. Commands. Questions. Movement. I heard officers entering. One of them immediately ordered me to raise my hands. Another moved toward Brooke. Everyone was talking at once. The situation had spiraled completely beyond the boundaries of a marriage. This wasn't about infidelity anymore. This wasn't about divorce. This wasn't even about betrayal. Police officers, paramedics, potential criminal charges. All of them had entered the picture within a matter of minutes. As medical personnel guided me toward a chair and began flushing my eyes with saline solution, I heard one officer ask Brooke what happened. Her answer came instantly. Confident, prepared, practiced. And as I listened to her describe a version of events that had never occurred, I realized something important. The woman I had married wasn't trying to save herself anymore. She was trying to destroy me. By the time the ambulance doors closed, the burning in my eyes had become manageable. The fear hadn't. A paramedic sat across from me, checking my blood pressure while another continued flushing my eyes with saline. The cut on my cheek had already been cleaned and bandaged. Physically, I was going to be fine. Legally, I had no idea. At the hospital, 2 police officers met me before I was even discharged. Neither was hostile. Neither was friendly. They were doing their jobs. And at that moment, I was still considered part of an active domestic violence investigation. One officer carried a notebook. The other carried a tablet. Both asked the same questions repeatedly. What happened when you arrived home? What happened in the kitchen? Did you strike your wife at any point? Did you threaten her? Did you physically block her from leaving? The questions came from different angles, but focused on the same issue: violence. I answered everyone exactly the same way. Calmly. Factually. I didn't embellish. I didn't speculate. I didn't try to convince them of anything. I simply described events as they occurred. The black pickup truck. Finding Logan. The financial records. The confrontation. The slash across my face. The pepper spray. Nothing more. Nothing less. One officer studied me carefully. You're not angry? The question caught me off guard. I thought about it honestly before answering. I was angry 10 days ago. The officer raised an eyebrow. And now? I looked toward the hospital window. Darkness had settled outside. The entire day felt unreal. I just want the truth recorded correctly. The officer nodded slowly and wrote something in his notebook. Meanwhile, Brooke was being interviewed in another part of the hospital. I didn't hear those conversations directly, but bits and pieces eventually reached me. First through officers, then through attorneys, then through official reports. The problem for Brooke was simple. Her story kept changing. The first version claimed I attacked her immediately after arriving home. The second version placed the confrontation in the kitchen. The third version included details that directly contradicted physical evidence. Each retelling created new inconsistencies, new questions, new problems. Facts are stubborn things. They don't adapt to match a story. A story has to adapt to match facts. And Brooke was running out of facts. Around midnight, one of the officers returned to my room. His posture seemed different now. Less investigative. More conversational. We have additional questions for your wife. I nodded. He hesitated, then added something unexpected. Mr. Carter, is there any reason your neighbor's security camera would show your wife standing outside, making a phone call before officers arrived? I looked up. What? The officer checked his notes. Camera footage places her outside for approximately 3 minutes before the emergency call was made. For the first time that day, I felt something close to relief. Not because the footage helped me, because it existed, because cameras don't forget. They don't panic. They don't change their stories. They simply record. The officer closed his notebook. We'll continue sorting this out. As he walked away, I sat quietly in the hospital bed. For the first time since arriving home that afternoon, I stopped worrying about proving my innocence. I didn't need to. The facts were already beginning to do that for me. The investigation moved faster than I expected. A neighbor's security camera captured part of the incident from across the street. More importantly, it captured Brooke outside before she called 911. That alone contradicted several parts of her statement. Then investigators found something even worse. A text message she had sent to a friend earlier that afternoon. The timestamp placed it before I arrived home. The message was short. If he finds out, I'll tell everyone he started it. Once that surfaced, the direction of the case changed almost immediately. The criminal investigation continued, but the divorce process moved forward as well. And that was when the financial discoveries became impossible to ignore. Thousands of dollars had disappeared from our joint accounts over several years. Hotel rooms, flights, restaurants, gifts, expenses tied directly to multiple affairs. The evidence kept growing. So did the consequences. A few months later, the divorce was finalized. I kept the house. Brooke received a suspended sentence related to the assault and false statements. Soon afterward, her employer learned about the conviction. She lost her job. By then, I wasn't angry anymore. I just wanted the chapter closed. That's the end of this story. If you made it all the way here, consider subscribing to stay with us. I've placed a couple of recommended videos on screen for you. Pick one and keep watching. I'll see you in the next story.